How are you?
Doing well, guys. How about you?
Doing good. Doing good. Tell me a little bit about what's going on as far as recruiting. We were talking about safety and recruiting. Aiden Hall committed last week. What did that mean for LSU?
Yeah, Aiden Hall, I love his game. I mean, he's one of the best safeties in the country, out of the New Orleans area, top 100 prospect, and really looks like he should be playing for LSU right now, just physically with the way he's able to move around out there and just his size that he's got out there, already ready to go for the college game. So a really big playmaker for his program, and I think a guy that with 2 years of high school football ahead, he'll be able to, develop physically more and play early. I mean, that's when you look at the cornerback and the safety spot, being physically there is most of the battle. I mean, between athleticism and size, I mean, those guys just can trust their instincts, and go out and play when they have that combination of size and speed like Aiden Hall has. So I love this pickup for LSU. He's one of the guys in the 2026 class that I'm highest on. And, kudos to Frank Wilson and the whole staff for getting New Orleans locked down. They've got quite the group committed from New Orleans already.
He's the safety here in Baton Rouge. It seems like you guys over at On 3 are very high on. He's a top 10 prospect in the country, no matter the position, and seems to be one of the top safeties in the cycle. He's right here in Baton Rouge. Where does Hall's commitment make Bradford's recruitment stand?
I still really like where LSU stands with Blain Bradford. I mean, a Catholic high prospect who, again, kind of built different. Aiden Hall is the same way, just physically, but Blain Bradford is ready to go now, in my opinion. And he'll have 2 more years of development, just like Aiden, in terms of playing and getting experience and doing all of those things. But what Blain can do out there on the field is pretty impressive. I mean, not many safeties in the country can be ranked as top 10 prospects this early. Usually it's the more physically imposing looking guys like an offensive tackle or quarterback, and defensive tackles and wide receivers. Safeties, just, it's an interesting position to evaluate. So for LSU to be in position with a prospect like Blain Bradford this early is a good sign. I really like where things stand there. And this is a 2026 class that includes Jakeem Stewart in the top 10, Lamar Brown in the top 10, all 3 from Louisiana with Blain Bradford. And, you've got to feel good about LSU's chances to come away with at least 2 of the 3. But in all likelihood right now, 3 of 3. That would be quite the accomplishment for Brian Kelly and his staff. And Blain Bradford would be a big headliner if they can reel him in.
The last couple of days in recruiting that has jumped out, Philip Wright, who seems to be a target of LSU down at Destrehan, a one-time Michigan commit, was a visitor in Baton Rouge at LSU for the Bayou Splash weekend as a commitment to the Wolverines. He's since decommitted. What's that mean for the Tigers?
Yeah, Philip Wright is one of the fastest guys in the entire country. He picked up an LSU track offer, if that tells you anything about his speed. He picked that up late last month, and LSU offered him really early, but also wanted to see more. It was one of those interesting situations where they got the offer out, and he hadn't exactly been productive as a junior. He's got an interesting quarterback situation at Destrehan and plays with another star 2026 prospect, Jabari Mack, who was on campus for the Bayou Splash. His teammate is Jace Thomas, a 2025 4-star safety commit for LSU. So there's already some ties to LSU with the guys that are at Destrehan. Forget the history that LSU's had with Destrehan prospects, but Philip Wright is I think one of the guys that we could see move up this fall if he shows that production that matches that speed and top end talent that he has. I mean, again, one of the fastest guys in the state, and is now trending to LSU after decommitting from Michigan. The Tigers really turned up the heat over the course of June and July, and as the wide receivers that were out of state, like DeCorian Moore and Colley and CJ Wiley and some of those others, trended away, LSU started to pick up the pace recruiting Philip Wright. And I think he's somebody that you've got to take. You have a good track record with Destrehan kids, and continues to keep that pipeline churning from one of the top programs in the state. And I think in short order, you'll see him jump on board with LSU.
Board right now that LSU's paying attention to that are set to make decisions here soon with a hat on the table for the Tigers. Khik, Lockett, and Jamie French. What's going on with their recruitment? And I know they have some decisions coming up.
Yeah, Khik Lockett, I'll start there. There was at one point where, Khik Lockett, the 5-star wide receiver out of Saxe, Texas, looked like he was going to end up at LSU. And things just kind of cooled off, and it just fizzled. And sometimes that happens in recruiting. You can point back probably every cycle to a kid or two where you at one point you just thought they were going to end up at LSU, and for whatever reason it just kind of fades. And that's what happened with Khik. He had a lot of programs that he took a liking to, and the one program that I would say always stuck around in a sense, but they didn't make a big noise of it, was Texas. I would say in May, it looked like that was when Khik Lockett was heavily favored to LSU, especially in April too. And it looked like they were going to get him. And he goes on some other visits. He takes some trips to like a Florida State or a Texas A&M. And, he kind of really enjoyed himself. And that was all the buzz around those programs. But then he ends up taking that last official visit to Texas. He never wavered from taking that and kind of diving into this recruitment. I thought he was going to get away from the Longhorns probably April, May. I just thought there were other programs that had a better footing. And that was at the time when Texas had DeCorian Moore they thought they were going to get. They were still very much in the picture for Jamie French and still are. But it just looked like Khik was kind of an afterthought. But they kept recruiting him. And with the way their wide receiver recruiting has gone over the course of the summer, he's become an even bigger priority to keep in the state of Texas for them. And I think he ends up at Texas. With Jamie French, he's another guy that's kind of been a little flavor of the weekish. Early on in his recruitment, after his sophomore season, I was talking with a couple people around it, and most thought he would end up at LSU. And Cortez Hankton had him as probably the top wide receiver on the board outside of DeCorian Moore, and just had really prioritized him. And he's got family in Louisiana and deep ties to the state. And then he up and commits to Alabama in the fall, and then Nick Saban retires. He backs off his commitment. And from there, it's been, okay, LSU's in the mix. Okay, Ohio State's in the picture. Miami emerges, Texas emerges, all these different programs have emerged, but LSU, Miami, and Texas are the ones that are in the final picture here. It doesn't seem like LSU is going to get him at this stage, but I will say this, he's been a somewhat of a flavor of the week kind of recruitment, and we saw with DJ Pickett that LSU was in the final three. They weren't being talked about. We'll see if LSU can pull off the surprise here, but I'm not hearing as much about that possibility right now as we were with DJ Pickett, kind of behind the scenes sources saying, they were in contact with him, deep discussion about, okay, where would DJ live? What's the NIL situation? All of those things. They're having those conversations with Jamie, but it just doesn't seem like it's as deep as maybe the DJ Pickett one was. So as of now, I would say probably ends up in Miami or Texas, but we'll be keeping a close eye on that one. With his ties to the state, it wouldn't shock me if LSU pulled the surprise, but right now, not expecting it.
LSU had a nice SEC flip last week as Blake Baker and the crew flipped a linebacker from South Carolina, Jaden Breaker, to LSU after Breaker visiting Baton Rouge only one time. What's LSU get?
The comp I got was Damone Clark, which is a pretty good one. And Blake Baker knows exactly how to work with a guy like Damone Clark and make him produce. And Jaden Breaker, I think, really bought into that development plan. And for all the recruitniks out there that laugh over dream school comments and things like that. Well, Jaden Breaker threw a dream school comment once he picked up the offer, and lo and behold, he actually commits to LSU. Sometimes with that dream school, you can cross them off the list from time to time when they're outside of the state. But a really, I think, high-end prospect from a physical traits perspective. I think he's got a chance to show on his senior tape that he can move up, and I think this is another prime example of Blake Baker doing a nice job working down the board and finding a prospect that over the summer has really picked up steam as far as, just his high-end upside. We saw him go after C.J. Ross out of the Houston area pretty early, and that paid off. He's now one of the best linebackers in the country as far as the rankings go, and I think we could see that with that type of a rise with Jaden Breaker. We'll have to see him as a senior, but that's the physical tools standing out at that position that Blake Baker would love to obviously work with, and it worked out, and they got him on board.
Bill, a decision coming over the weekend that LSU is going to be paying attention to is up in Nashville, Tennessee. CJ Jim Colley, who's come down to Baton Rouge a couple of times, he's down to LSU, Stanford, Alabama, or Tennessee. Where do you see this one shaking out on August 8th?
I think LSU fans are going to get good news, and this is, I think, probably the product of a lot of things. Jake Olson, Blake Baker working this one well as far as just recruiting him, but Brian Kelly's pitch to graduate champions, and not to say that any other coach at LSU couldn't have done this, but when you're going up against Stanford, it helps when somebody has a track record of I've been at a Notre Dame, I've been at that level of an academic institution, and here's what we can do for you at LSU, because there are certain kids that Stanford recruits, and you have to be wired differently to go to Stanford, and you have to have, in a way, different priorities. And CJ was really down to LSU and Stanford, and LSU just made everything, I think, work out and make sense. His father's from Louisiana, from New Orleans, and got ties to the state and to LSU. And so I think that whole combination, and on top of maybe staying a little bit closer to home, Nashville to New Orleans on a Southwest flight, pretty easy to do. Mm-hmm. I think all of those things made a lot of sense for them. And I think at this stage, LSU will get good news and pull a 4-star safety out of the state of Tennessee, which would be really impressive with the way the Vols are recruiting as well.
Wow. I mean, Bill, I don't mean to be a homer, but I mean, LSU over the last couple of weeks seeming recruiting heater, huh?
Yeah, it's all coming together. It appears so. I think you're seeing the product of Brian Kelly and his staff being very comfortable in year 3 in terms of their pitch. Obviously, he's got new faces on the defensive side of the ball that have worked out very well in recruiting. But Austin Thomas also returning to Baton Rouge and getting the NIL aligned, and Bayou Traditions and TAF and that partnership. Just talking with BK at SEC Media Days about that, very important move for LSU on that front to really weaponize the fan base and those that trust TAF but weren't sure if they should get into Bayou Traditions. And, I think the support will only grow. And you have success like this in recruiting, more people trust you even more to then manage the NIL funds and things like that. And so it can really snowball from here, and we'll see LSU talked about as, a true NIL power. It still doesn't seem real at times when you're talking about having Bryce Underwood committed in the number 1 overall prospect. That takes NIL. Beating Miami and Oregon for DJ Pickett, that takes NIL. But over the course of the summer, I think they've cemented themselves as a power in that space.
Last one, Bill, get you out of here. Great stuff this morning. 2-part question. One more on 2026. Jaylen Chapman, latest offensive line commit for Brad Davis, continuing to do work. But what's this mean for New Orleans? It seems like LSU's got their grip back on New Orleans. Chapman out of Warren Easton, which is right in the heart of New Orleans, that attracts college coaches from all 4 corners of the country. It seems like LSU's back in the driver's seat in the city.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jaylen Chapman looks like a prospect that Brad Davis can develop into a center DJ Chester is going to be that guy for the foreseeable future until, in my opinion, he heads off to the NFL and will leave a big hole. And by that time, you're looking at Jaylen Chapman potentially being on campus for a year or two. And I think he'll be somebody that LSU can develop into that center position, just like they're doing with DJ Chester. But he's also pretty well tied into the New Orleans area. It seems like he's friends with a lot of the top prospects, so could help with the Jakeem Stewart, could continue to just build those inroads. And with Richard Anderson, Ja'Kai Anderson, Jaylen Chapman, just the whole group that they've got in 2026, it's a strong start in New Orleans. And again, you've just got to credit Frank Wilson for being on top of it and getting out ahead as well, because sometimes these guys want to take all these visits and do all these things, and to get some of these highly rated guys to shut it down so early is really impressive and not necessarily easy to do. So terrific job by LSU in New Orleans.
Great work this morning, Bill. Thanks for the